This is Joe Hata back again with another OVI practice tip for you DUI defense attorneys out there. Today we're talking about 6 clues on the HGN. What does that mean? Well, it can mean that you are still legal and under the limit. And this is according to NHTSA. So let's explore it a little bit. All right, so if you want to know what 6 clues actually means, you might think that you would start at the NHTSA manual, the student manual. Because what do they teach you? They teach you that 4 clues on the HGN means that you are over a .08. Now, does NHTSA's own studies actually support that? Of course not, but you know where this is headed. Let's look into it a little bit. I am talking about the study from the year 2000, the robustness study. This study you won't find in this manual. This manual does not mention it. I think that NHTSA would like to erase it from history, but that's not going to happen because it's been published and it's out there and we're going to talk about it. So they have mentioned before what 4 clues means. They did that in this manual, the 2009 version of the 2006 manual, but hey, that's what NHTSA does. So, but in that manual, what did they say 4 clues meant? Well, they meant that 4 clues meant you were over a .10. Did they use any science to take it from a .10 down to a .08? Nah, they just reworked it. I can almost imagine how they did that. But we've got more information than that. And it came before this manual. And it came before the 2018 manual. It came in the year 2000. And it was the robustness of the HGN test, horizontal gaze nystagmus test. And in that study, they set out to prove or establish certain things. They wanted to show that it was a good test when done properly, and that even you could screw it up a little bit and it was still a good test. That's what they were trying to prove. But we'll get into that part a little bit later. That's fun too. Primarily, I want to start you off at page 15. In page 15, they talk about what 4 clues and what 6 clues means to them. What that means to NHTSA. That little NHTSA icon in the corner there. What 4 and 6 clues means to them. So they'll tell you a hit occurred. That means it's a good result when you have 4 or 6 clues. 4 clues starting at a .03 and 6 clues at a .06. So does 4 clues actually mean that somebody is above a .08? No, it doesn't, because 4 clues at a .03, according to NHTSA, is a perfectly acceptable result. 6 clues, does that mean a .10? No, of course not. .06 is where you can see 6 clues. So even at 6 clues, the most that NHTSA can prove is that you are still under the limit. That's a perfectly acceptable result for somebody still under the limit standing in front of that officer. Does that amount to probable cause? That they can only prove that that person is still under the limit? No, 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 of course not. No, it doesn't. The HGN should not be admissible for probable cause to try and establish that somebody is committing a crime when they are operating a vehicle under the legal limit. That's where they feel it to be acceptable. But there's more information in the robustness study, so let's dive into it. So the robustness study, they talked about a few things. They talked about, all right, so when we do the test correctly, these are the results we're getting. But we're going to mess it up a little. We're going to go a little bit too high, a little bit too low, a little bit too far away, a little bit too close. Okay? They would test 35, 36 people, and they would try and discern how many clues that person exhibited. The important part here is whether or not a person is over the legal limit. So if you cannot determine whether or not somebody is a .08, a .09, or a .07 or an .06, that's your arrest decision. You have to know whether or not that person is over the legal limit to make that call. And the NHTSA manual in 2018 says that you can arrest anybody with 4 clues. That means they're over the 08. So if they're over the 08 and they've got 4 clues, cool. But if they're under the 08 and they've got 4 clues, then that would be a false positive. So that's what we're going to talk about. So false positives. At first, okay, we're talking about elevation. So are they high, are they too high or too low? The NHTSA manual says that you should be slightly above eye level. They have assigned slightly to 2 inches. You should be 2 inches above eye level to be doing it correctly. We're going to do too low by doing it directly at eye level, and too high by doing it 4 inches above eye level. So a 4-inch variance here. When they claim to have done it perfectly correctly, okay, they had 24 people. I think they had 36 in the pool, but they had 24 people who were under the legal limit. These are all people who the officer should have correctly identified as somebody I'm not going to arrest. But how many, what percentage of those 24 had 4 clues when the test is done perfectly correctly? Not good. 13 out of the 24, 54%. Under the legal limit exhibited 4 or more clues. Count them up on your own. I think this is on page 18 of the robustness study. But 54%, when done correctly, of people under the limit are getting arrested. I know that sounds ridiculous because it's worse than a coin flip, but don't worry, it gets worse. So if you mess it up just a little, if you do it just at eye level, and you count the people under the legal limit, and you do that, you put your stimulus too low, 79%. 19 out of 24 people under the legal limit exhibited 4 or more clues on the HGN in their own study. Let's go too high. Why not? So if we go too high, if we hold it 2 inches too high and conduct the same test, of those 24 people who are under the legal limit, 83%. Just keeps getting worse. So 20 out of 24 people under the legal limit exhibited 4 or more clues. But this is just elevation. Let's mix in whether you're too far or too close, because it's fun. So we got, in this one, we had 27 people out of the 35 or 36 who were under the legal limit. And when done correctly, when actually held 12 to 15 inches from the eyes, 2/3. 2/3 of the people under the legal limit, when the test was done correctly, would be arrested. 2/3. But, of course, let's take it further. All right, so let's go too far. So if we go too far, and we hold it at maybe 20 inches instead of the 12 to 15 that is pursuant to the NHTSA manual, what do we get? We get 85%. 85% of the people under the legal limit, that's 23 out of 27 people, are getting arrested when they should not. And if you go if you go too close, what do we get? 88.8. That is 24 out of 27 people. I could have rounded up. I could have gone to 89, but I went to 88.8, trying to be generous. That is a near 90% failure when the officer holds the stimulus too close. Nearly 90% of people under the legal limit are getting arrested despite committing 0 crime at all. All right, so we've done too high, too low, too far, too close. I'm going to add in this other little bit. It doesn't come from the robustness study, but as long as we're adding in all the different ways the officer can screw it up, let's toss it in. So if we want to talk about moving the stimulus too quickly, okay, it can cause a condition called catch-up saccades. Saccades is when the eye jumps to match the stimulus. The stimulus is moving, but it's moving too quickly. So the eye muscles have to jump the eye across to catch up to it. I've done it, I've tested it, I've seen it. It looks just like lack of smooth pursuit because the eye is trying to catch up to the stimulus. That's what happens in perfectly sober people. Zero alcohol in their system at all. If you move the stimulus too quickly, the eye has to catch up. It just can't move that fast. Okay? So what this study talks about, nystagmus testing in intoxicated individuals, it talks about what it means for people, whether it goes over a bunch of different things. Whether the person is laying down, sitting up, in different positions. It tries to analyze how well the HGN works. But one thing that this establishes is that perfectly sober people can, not most people, but perfectly sober people can exhibit catch-up saccades when the stimulus is moved at more than 30 degrees per second. Now, what does that mean? More than 30 degrees per second? That's roughly the 2-second pace from center to maximum deviation that they talk about in lack of smooth pursuit. So if you are moving faster than that 2-second pace, which we've all seen officers do, happens all the time, you will cause that person, you can cause that person to exhibit saccades, which looks just like lack of smooth pursuit, despite that person being completely sober. That's completely acceptable pursuant to this study of people who are dead sober. So what does the HGN mean? Does NHTSA use science? I mean, junk science. But if NHTSA is using junk science, all that tells you is that the HGN is garbage. So there's your HGN tip for the day, OVI tip for the day. Hope you find it useful, and there'll be more to come soon.